Hi, Paul Sakis, Good News Broadcast, speaking to Dr. Larry Levitt. Hi, Doctor. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Okay, good. You're a senior consultant in neurology, emeritus. I can't hardly say that.
That's good. Either one is all right.
It puts you in an esteemed situation at Lehigh Valley Hospital in Allentown,
right.
Pennsylvania, that is, a professor of clinical medicine at the Penn State College of Medicine, and you and Dr. Castaldo, an MD and Chief of Division of Neurology at Lehigh Valley Hospital in Allentown, Pennsylvania, put together a book called Uncommon Wisdom, True Tales of What Our Lives as Doctors Have Taught Us About Love, Faith, and Healing. Okay, that's
You
beautiful.
got that perfect.
All right. I'm improving with age. Do people improve with age?
Well, in many ways they do, but we don't remember names as well, but other things hopefully get better. Our experiences, our dealing with other people, and the reason we wrote this book is that we got wiser learning from our patients. That's the theme of the book. What did we learn about life from our patients?
What are some things that you did learn?
Excuse me?
What are some things that you learned?
Well, each chapter, there are 16 chapters, teaches us different lessons, and at the end of each chapter, we tell the lessons that we learned. I could give you a few examples of that if you'd like.
Please.
The first chapter is called Encountering Leonard, and your New York audience will remember, of course, and recognize that Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center is a major cancer center for the world, and I was an intern there, and I took care of a lady whose name was Dorothy Poole from Allentown, Pennsylvania. I'd never heard of Allentown. I'd never heard of her. She was dying. Actually, because she had a problem of cancer in her lung. Her husband slept in the room on the 8th floor at Memorial, I'll never forget it, and I thought it was because he couldn't afford the room, and he certainly couldn't afford a meal. So my wife, Eva, another chapter in the book is called Listen to Eva, which I've learned to do in our many years of marriage together. She said, bring him home for dinner. So I said, okay. I brought him home for dinner. He said, just call me Leonard. And she fed him chicken and carrots, and we had a lovely evening. And meanwhile, his wife was actually getting better, not because I was smart, but her real doctor, Dr. Geller, who was an oncologist at Memorial, figured out what was wrong with her with a little help from me, and we improved her sodium, which was low, and she got up and walked out of the hospital. So I was called to the president of Memorial Sloan Kettering in those days, whose name was Mr. Vanderwalker, and I was sure, Paul, that I was fired, right?
Right.
Wouldn't you think that as an intern?
Sure.
He said, you just took care of Mrs. Poole, and she is from Allentown, but her husband was just here, and he just gave us $1 million. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your care of Mrs. Poole. He's the CEO of Air Products and Chemicals, which is a major American company headquartered in Allentown, and I almost fainted.
Right. Okay.
So the lesson in that case is don't... First of all, Dr. Geller taught us don't give up on patients who are dying. They may have a reversible part of their problem, which she did. And number two, don't judge a book by its cover. It turns out he could have afforded a hotel room. He was just a good husband, which is why he slept on the couch.
When you listen to a patient, I see you have a chapter here, humble listening. What is humble listening?
Well, the chapter is not humble listening, but we believe in listening to our patients.
The section is humble listening.
The section is humble. Yeah, there's several examples of humble listening. John Castaldo learned to listen to his patients with humble listening. For example, there's a chapter about a dog who gave the clue that his master had only gone a few hours from having had a stroke, and John took that data and used it to give the patient TPA, which is a clot buster, and basically made the patient get better. I've learned to listen humbly to patients who have taught me many lessons, including how to deal with serious illness. A boy in Allentown who actually went to school in New York was on his first weekend home from Harvard College and was hit by a bicycle in a beautiful park here and basically died from being hit by a bicycle and having a blood clot on his head. I listened to him, I listened to his parents, and their whole lives changed as a result of this tragedy. His mother went back actually to the Bronx, New York, where she took a degree in psychology, and she now counsels other families who have trauma in their families. got a Ph.D., and the father, who's still around, a good friend of mine now, has become very charitable and established an institute in Israel called the Mati Hornstein Institute, where kids come from all over the world to study. So there are many lessons that we learned about how to take care of our patients better by listening. And of course, the original book was called The Man with the Iron Tattoo, which has now been added to and republished by Rodale. And that was a fabulous lesson. If you'd like, I could tell you.
Yeah, please, of course. Yeah, sure. Yeah. We love Rodale also. I love Artie Rodale.
Well, she died, a few months ago.
I know.
But I knew her husband, Bob Rodale, who basically was the icon of the company. But that's another story. The Man with the Iron Tattoo title originally comes from the fact that John Castaldo had a patient who came in from the Poconos. And he was confused, and they figured out he probably had a concussion. So John said, let's send him for an MRI. The patient says, Doc, you can't do an MRI on me. You're going to kill me. John leans forward and says, what do you mean I'm going to kill you? He says, well, I have these tattoos, and they told me that I can't get an MRI because I'll burn up and die. Well, John called the MRI people. They'd never heard of it. He'd never heard of it. He said, give him some Valium. He's just confused. So they sent him to the MRI, which is actually right next to our office, and something prompted him to look in the computer and plug in MRI and tattoo, push the button, enter, and out comes an article from the German literature that basically says if you have enough iron in the tattoos, you get a third-degree burn and you burn up and die.
Wow.
So he charged into the MRI, pulled the patient out just before he killed him, and his, of course, credit cards were swiped clean. His watch stopped, which is what happens when you run into an MRI. And he learned to listen to his patients better. But every morning when John gets out of the shower, he gets his underwear out, and in that drawer is the watch that stopped at 12:20 when that happened, to remind him to be humble that day and to listen to your patients.
Okay. Well, this is a very unusual book. Congratulations for doing it. I mean, unusual in a good way here, because the major themes, enriching connections, humble listening, going the distance, sorrow's lessons, love heals, leaps of faith. What brought you, in essence, well, you mentioned this other story about Iron Tattoo, but what brought you both to write this book?
Well, that's a very good question, Paul, and I think it came from the fact that John joined me actually in 1985, and we then spent 20 years together sharing the same desk, the same oak desk on purpose in Allentown. He came from Dartmouth. He was very well trained, and he learned from his mentor in Dartmouth, a fellow named James Burnett, that he should try to learn something from each patient. So he did, and he put it in a book. He shared that habit with me, and I started doing the same thing. And we shared with each other what we learned about multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease and epilepsy and stroke. But then, Paul, what we learned was we were learning about life. Not only about these neurological problems, but we were learning how does family deal with bad problems. How do you instill hope into a patient when things don't look very good, but hope will help them and you to keep at it. So we learned about life, and we decided to write that up. And we wrote it up in basically in the format that is currently true in the book called Uncommon Wisdom, True Tales, to see if anyone might be interested. And a small publisher in Texas originally was interested and now recently taken over by Rodale, and they asked that we add additional chapters, which we did. And it's been a life's work, but something that we enjoyed very much.
Would you say, there is immense pressure on doctors. I think many people don't realize how difficult it is to be a doctor. Actually, we're building out some channels. I was just at NYU hospital talking to, we're going to buy eyes and ears and autism. We like science, okay? And I did a series called The Brain many years ago in public television. I was involved in that one. But each of the doctors, though, my brother-in-law is a doctor, and I know the stress and pain. He's a radiologist that, he's making some decisions on people's lives. That's not an easy position to be in. Is a writer, for you, sort of like your opportunity to get another side out of you in a business that has stress?
Good question, and you have medicine in your family, so you know about it. The stress is great, but the rewards are great. Saving people's lives, which we tried to do over a period of many years, is very rewarding. Some of the stress is unnecessary. The malpractice stress is great and unnecessary. We need to do better, and one of the disappointments I have with the healthcare reform bill is it doesn't really deal with that. California has done better, Texas has done better, but for doctors to get sued, it really almost doesn't matter if you're guilty or not. The stress on you is terrible, and much of the reward, if it comes, goes to the legal community. It doesn't even go to the patient. So unnecessary stress exists. The stress of trying to figure out how to see your patients in 15 minutes, which is what the managed care company seems to require in order for you to make a decent living, is hard. Reimbursements have gone down. But I'd have to tell you, my son is a physician, pediatric surgeon in Cincinnati, where, by the way, he just came back from Ghana, where he operated on 26 kids, and I'm very proud of him because he made them go from wearing a colostomy to being continent. Pretty good.
Wow.
He decided to go into medicine because he loved it. He was inspired by a mentor of his and to become a pediatric surgeon, and he loves it. And he's decided that he makes less than he might otherwise make, but he enjoys it. So you're correct. The stresses are great. Some of them are unnecessary, but the rewards are great too. And I wouldn't have done anything different if I had a chance to do it over again.
Well, I think your book is extremely inspirational. I hope, I hope the medical schools pick it up as well, because it is this other side, as I say, of the career. This is the humanity side of the career, what you learn from patients, and being a good listener. I think you and your partner there are good listeners.
We are, and thank you. You said NYU. I did my internship at Bellevue. One of the chapters is about that, and I almost quit. I tried to quit, but my chief there at the time didn't let me quit because 3 of my patients had died. I was up all night when I was on the hospital. Then I would fall asleep at the table. Then I'd be up all night. The stress was great, but I survived. All of us who did survive thought we were in the war together. And Bellevue was a great place to learn. NYU is an outstanding institution. There used to be, by the way, 3 medical schools that shared the experience at Bellevue: Cornell, Columbia, and NYU. And then Cornell and Columbia basically left, and NYU runs Bellevue. And it's a great place for care, and it's a great place for learning.
Well, the hospitals were very fortunate to have such great medical care in America. There's no doubt about it, and it's all good. Dr. Levitt, thank you very much for sharing your good news. Much success with the book. It's a heartwarming stories. Thank you very much.
You're very kind, and thank you for the call.
Okay, bye-bye.